Ever since it was first announced, Sony Pictures' 2016 reboot of the Ghostbusters, helmed by director Paul Feig, has been mired in controversy and production problems. The barrage of rumors has been so constant that it almost requires a full-time job to keep track of it all. This video aims to cut through the noise and give you the full story behind the story of Paul Feig's Ghostbusters, and will go through the early development of Ghostbusters 3 under Ivan Reitman, how Paul Feig's Ghostbusters wound up getting made instead, Sony's plans for a shared Ghostbusters universe, the rumors that the original cast were strong-armed into participating, the rumored production trouble and story synopsis, and the perceived outcry over the female cast. In the last few years, there has been a trend that previously popular franchises that were thought long since finished are revived and receive new installments. Some of these even function as partial reboots, where the original cast passed the mantle to a new, younger cast. This was, in fact, the initial plan for the Ghostbusters franchise as well. While the new Ghostbusters movie, directed by Paul Feig, is a remake that negates and replaces the original movies, it actually started out as Ghostbusters 3, the direct sequel to the original Ghostbusters movies that the fans always wanted. Work on the now defunct Ghostbusters 3 dates as far back as 1999, when Dan Aykroyd first wrote the script Ghostbusters 3 Hellbent, in which a number of new and younger Ghostbusters joined the team. The script went through several rewrites and iterations over the course of the next decade, but the project never entered formal production. Harold Ramis would later explain that Ghostbusters 3 never got off the ground because no one in Sony was motivated to pursue it. This despite Reitman and the original cast all being keen to make another, only Bill Murray was more reluctant. In 2009, a full 10 years after Aykroyd started working on Ghostbusters 3, Atari released Ghostbusters the video game. The game took place 2 years after the events of Ghostbusters 2 and featured the likeness and voice talents of the original cast. Dan Aykroyd described it as essentially the third movie that he had originally devised. The game went on to become a huge hit, selling over 1 million copies. This did not go unnoticed by Sony. In the aftermath of the game's release, they started to show signs of interest towards actually making Ghostbusters 3 the movie. The last few years have been rough for Sony, with virtually all of their tentpole movies not featuring either James Bond or Spider-Man underperforming or outright bombing. This, of course, gave the two studio head honchos most responsible for the lackluster slate, Michael Lynton and Amy Pascal, increased pressure to cut costs and establish bankable franchises, which Sony lacked. In this climate, the Ghostbusters brand started to look tempting, not just for a one-off sequel, but as a brand they could build a Marvel-inspired cinematic universe around. This was when Sony became more involved in the production. Sony wanted to revitalize the franchise by having the original Ghostbusters train a dramatically younger crew in Ghostbusters 3, which corresponded with what Dan Aykroyd and Ivan Reitman also wanted. But Sony also wanted a younger director to helm the movie instead of Ivan Reitman. Vulture reported that Sony brass, meaning Amy Pascal and Michael Lynton, wanted Mark Webb, who at the time was hot off the romantic drama comedy 500 Days of Summer, to direct Ghostbusters 3. However, according to the contracts from the early 80s between Sony and original Ghostbusters director and producer Ivan Reitman, Reitman had a great degree of creative control over future Ghostbusters movies, including director approval, and Reitman wanted to direct Ghostbusters 3 himself. While Reitman couldn't force Sony to make Ghostbusters 3 with him, it would be very difficult for Sony to make the movie with someone else unless Reitman approved or stepped down first. Sony yielded for the time being, and Amy Pascal had Mark Webb direct the Amazing Spider-Man reboot and its sequel instead. Check out our Spider-Man coverage for the full story of how that came about and how it turned out. Under director Ivan Reitman, Ghostbusters 3 was said to be a passing of the torch movie in which the new team would consist of 3 men and 1 woman, all in their 20s. The movie had the working title of Ghostbusters Alive Again, and Reitman was considering Jonah Hill, Zach Galifianakis, Adam Pally, Charlie Day, and Jesse Eisenberg among the candidates for the 3 male Ghostbusters, with Brie Larson and Anne Hathaway for the female. For the villain, Reitman wanted Sacha Baron Cohen, as he could pull off both funny and scary. In a May 2013 interview with Larry King, Dan Aykroyd revealed the overall story. It's based on new research that's being done in particle physics by the young men and women at Columbia University. The world, or the dimension that we live in, our 4 planes of existence, length, height, width, and time become threatened by some of the research that's being done. The Ghostbusters would have to come and solve the problem. Aykroyd also confirmed at the time Bill Murray, the original cast member who had been reluctant about Ghostbusters 3, was not scheduled to appear, but that the movie would proceed without him. But he hastened to add that if Murray suddenly walked in the door and wanted to be a part of the movie, they had a place for him. It should be noted that being reluctant only to walk in the door at the last moment is something Bill Murray has a history of doing. The makers of Lost in Translation famously didn't know whether or not Bill Murray would be in the movie until he actually showed up on set. From the outside, it looked as if Ghostbusters 3 might soon go into production. Behind the scenes, however, trouble was brewing. From the emails leaked in the notorious 2014 Sony hack, it is clear that Sony executives, most notably Amy Pascal, did not have faith in Ivan Reitman or his take on Ghostbusters. In an email correspondence between Doug Belgrad and Amy Pascal, Belgrad bemoaned Reitman's references to the earlier movies in the script, and expressed interest in seeing Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen produce the movie along with Reitman, and that it stars Seth Rogen. Amy Pascal answered that it doesn't matter who produces if the director is wrong, and made it clear in her opinion that the only way to do Ghostbusters right was by forcing Ivan Reitman out. Development came to a halt when Harold Ramis passed away in February of 2014. We do not know the details of what transpired behind the scenes, but on March 18, 2014, Ivan Reitman told Deadline Hollywood in an exclusive interview that he had a change of heart about directing and stepped back. He would instead produce the movie and help Amy Pascal find a new director. However, from the Sony hack, it emerged that all of Reitman's main talking points in the Deadline Hollywood interview had been carefully scripted by Sony's Doug Belgrad and Charlie Sipkins the day before and approved by Amy Pascal. When he stepped down as director, Reitman lost the creative control he had over the movie up until then. From here on out, Amy Pascal and Sony exerted far greater control over the production. From the leaked emails, we see that Ivan Reitman wanted Phil Lord and Chris Miller to direct Ghostbusters 3, produced by him. But Amy Pascal had other plans, and wasted no time in going behind Reitman's back and approaching another director she knew would see eye to eye with her, namely Paul Feig. Paul Feig is of course known for Bridesmaids, The Heat, and Spy, all hits relative to their budget, and all female-centric. In an interview with Variety from April 2015, Feig revealed that his worldview had been female-centric from an early age, which no doubt influenced his sensibilities in film. He grew up an only child, and with his father often away on business, Feig spent a lot of time with his mother. Most of his friends were, quote, either girls or sensitive guys like himself. Other boys bullied him for the combination of his mannerisms and the resemblance of his surname to a certain gay slur. In his own words, he quote-unquote never cared for male bonding. As to him, that meant being beaten up by other boys. Regardless of what caused it, the passion for female-centric movies was something Feig shared with Amy Pascal. In April of 2015, a source close to Pascal and Sony told Mirror that, quote, for years it has been all about male superheroes, but it's about time that changed. There should be more movies made with girls in mind. This was something that Amy was very adamant about, end quote. One of the spin-off movies planned for Sony's Spider-Man universe was an all-female superhero team with the working title Glass Ceiling. From the leaked emails, it is clear that Pascal was ecstatic about this project, and she wanted Paul Feig to direct it. Glass Ceiling wound up being put on the back burner in the aftermath of The Amazing Spider-Man 2's failure to launch a Spider-Man universe, but Pascal would call on Feig again to direct Ghostbusters. Feig, however, declined the offer. At this time, the movie was still Ghostbusters 3, with the script developed under Ivan Reitman, who still served as producer. Feig was offered the movie several times, but he kept on declining because he had reservations about working with a producer like Reitman, who had fixed ideas of how the movie should be, and because he did not want to make a sequel about pre-existing characters in a pre-existing world. He would rather do a female-centric origin story featuring his favorite actresses and have them develop the technology from scratch instead of having it handed to them. Amy Pascal loved this take. From the leaked Sony emails, we learned that Amy Pascal convinced Feig to sign on by promising him the autonomy to make the movie he wanted, and that he didn't have to worry about Ivan Reitman. At this point, Amy Pascal seemed intent on freezing out original director and then producer Ivan Reitman, and leaving him out of the proceedings as much as possible. Pascal invited the newly appointed Ghostbusters director and everyone else involved with Ghostbusters to a dinner party at her house. That is, everyone except Ivan Reitman. Pascal says as much herself in a leaked email where she stresses the importance of Feig not making reference to the dinner party in the imminent first meeting between Feig and Reitman, as Reitman was the only one kept in the dark about there being a dinner party at all. In Pascal's usual style, the mail has no punctuation, is filled with misspellings, is written in all caps, and to top it off, she sent a copy of it to an unintended receiver. Ivan Reitman was seemingly pushed more and more to the wayside, to the point where his producer credit for all intents and purposes is marquee only. From the leaked emails, one can easily get the impression that even if he may say otherwise in public, Ivan Reitman is not happy about Ghostbusters being rebooted in private. He clearly wanted to see a continuation of the original series, while Pascal wanted to placate him by filling the remake with references to the original. Pascal describes the connection between the original movies and Reboot as a meta-connection, meaning the same music and iconography, so Sony can benefit from the assets of the brand, but no story continuity. On September 7, 2014, Paul Feig emailed a pitch to Amy Pascal, which represented his vision for the movie. Amy, here's my take on it. It's a reboot of the franchise in a world, our world, that has never actually had any legitimate contact with the ghost world. Our villain ghost is an executed murderer, a Ted Kaczynski type, think Peter Dinklage, who has left behind a manifesto of how he wants to change and destroy the world. When his execution is hit by a supercharged electrical storm, he is turned into a powerful ghost, able to rouse other villainous spirits from the ghost world to carry out the ever-expanding plans of his manifesto. Our 4 new female Ghostbusters come together in an origin story that sees them forming a team based on their diverse skills and plays with the invention and trial and error of their various ghostbusting technology and techniques as they try to stop the villain and his ever-growing force of evil ghosts, which is a very boring way of saying that we'll see 4 very different women come together and figure out in funny, scary, and action-packed ways how to save New York City and the world. This first film will deal with this one mission and the formation of our team and the evolution of their hardware, and by the end result, in them forming their actual Ghostbusters business, versus starting a business mid-film like the original movie. However, I would like to keep their business as a secret government agency in a world where the government has worked hard to cover up the events of this first reboot in order to keep the public from knowing that there is now a possible reoccurring ghost threat over our country. I'm playing with the idea that, a la Close Encounters, the government stages an evacuation of Midtown Manhattan to keep the public from knowing about the ghost threat, so that even though most of Midtown Manhattan is a mess after the final battle, they are able to explain it away as a gas explosion or something to that effect. This will keep the franchise from having to denounce the Ghostbusters in a sequel or drop them back into a world where the public is fully aware of ghosts. This will give the franchise much more longevity. There's a funny dynamic we want to play with, where the government eventually starts working with the Ghostbusters, but has to keep denouncing them publicly, having a Cecily Strong type character always saying terrible things about them in press conferences and then apologizing to them behind the scenes, even though her public attacks on them get more and more personal. I'm sorry, I just have to make it sound convincing. Tonally, the movie will be a bit scarier and more high-tech than the original, and the set pieces will be bigger, while still being very funny. For example, I want in the third act to have the entire police force and army accompany the Ghostbusters to the final battle. But since our villain only wants to deal with the Ghostbusters and wants to make the government look ridiculous, he possesses the entire police and army forces and makes them do a big, ridiculous dance number in the middle of Fifth Avenue, thus neutralizing them and delighting himself. I think that having our main villain be both evil and funny in the ways screws with our world as he's trying to carry out the points of his manifesto, get revenge on everyone who slighted him, humiliate and take down Wall Street, make the United States look ridiculous to the rest of the world, and eventually destroy New York City, which to him is the brain of the US, as well as have fun with the ghosts he picks to carry out various tasks. Could be all dead villains and famous criminals he recruits from the ghost world, and, in what I think could be a billion-dollar idea, recruits the ghosts of evil beings from other parts of the universe. Yes, ghost aliens. Our world isn't the only place in the universe with bad and dangerous beings that have died, you know. There's a lot of bored dead monsters out there who are just looking for something to do. Anyway, these are all things we're experimenting with and are looking forward to exploring as we write the first draft. I hope this helps in your lunch. Break a leg, smiley face, Paul. Amy Pascal replied, "Sounds fantastic. I'll call you." With approval given, the pitch was further refined and eventually developed into a script. And so the Ghostbusters, no longer a sequel but a de facto remake, entered production. After early interest from among others Jennifer Lawrence, Emma Stone, Rebel Wilson, and Amy Schumer didn't lead to anything further, Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones emerged as the new Ghostbusters going forward. Fan reaction, as we will get back to later, was, to put it mildly, less than ecstatic. In December of 2014, the Sony hack happened, in which a plethora of, amongst other things, personal emails were released online. These leaked emails are what has enabled us to piece together in such detail what has happened behind closed doors at Sony. In the aftermath of the leak, Amy Pascal was forced to resign from her position as chairman of Sony Pictures Entertainment. As her replacement, Michael Linton appointed Tom Rothman, the notorious former Fox head honcho with a very checkered past as far as genre movies are concerned, whom we have discussed previously here at Midnight's Edge. Amy Pascal, however, now no longer an executive, would remain with Sony. Furthermore, she would continue her involvement with the Ghostbusters remake as a producer. While no more emails were leaked from Sony after the hack, we still learned of some of the happenings behind the scenes through other sources. While there had been some murmurs even earlier, rumors that the production had been a troubled one started to gain traction on February 4th, 2016, 1 month before the first Ghostbusters trailer was released, before it went on to become the most disliked trailer of all time. That's when an anonymous poster on 4chan claiming insider knowledge warned that the finished movie looked set to be a train wreck. This kind of information should always be taken with a grain of salt, but not dismissed outright. We first learned of the trouble behind the scenes of Fant Four Stick and Green Lantern, among others, in exactly the same way. The anonymous poster claimed that the entire cast signed on because they loved the original and wanted to make something good. Melissa McCarthy specifically signed on because she was a huge fan of the Saturday morning cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, which was spun off from the original movie. Instead of making a good movie in keeping with the spirit of the cartoon, the movie was saddled with a, quote, lame duck of a script, which led to frequent on-set fights with director Paul Feig. Paul Feig apparently had a hard time on set, and was elsewhere rumored to actually break down on set and cry when filming the police and army dance routine, as it did not work, and would heavily be trimmed down in the finished movie compared to what was originally conceived. Furthermore, McCarthy and one of the other actresses involved allegedly had a huge clash of egos on set, so more time was devoted each day to ensuring they both had an equal amount of lines, assistants, and the like to mollify them than they actually spent shooting the film. Kristen Wiig was also said to be very unhappy with the film, and apparently spent most of her time between scenes, lamenting that she had gotten involved in this disaster on the phone with friends from her trailer. This led to the entire cast and crew being forced to sign additional NDAs, preventing them from discussing any aspects of the production or final film in anything less than a glowingly positive light, as the studio did not want a repeat of the Fox debacle, where Fant Four Stick director Josh Trank publicly denounced the movie on the eve of its premiere, which we also covered extensively here at Midnight's Edge. Like Josh Trank before him, director Paul Feig also had meltdowns on Twitter, resorting to name-calling and F-bombs against fans critical of the movie being remade. According to the anonymous 4chan poster, these Twitter meltdowns were the result of the very real prospect that this film will at the very least severely damage Feig's career. The anonymous poster went on to say that Sony is in full-blown panic mode because they were banking on the movie being a hit that would kickstart a Ghostbusters cinematic universe, but instead it might kill any viability of that idea for 10 to 20 years. Also, Sony had employed both lawyers and bribes to strong-arm the original cast members into shooting pickup cameos, in the hopes that they could sell the movie on misplaced nostalgia. Before we move on, let us explore both of these claims a bit further. On March 9th, 2016, 1 week after the first trailer for the female-centric Ghostbusters was released and wildly disliked, Deadline Hollywood, an outlet which Sony has a history of giving exclusives, broke another exclusive. A male-centric Ghostbusters was also in the works, which was intended to star Chris Pratt and Channing Tatum, with the Russo brothers directing. Later on that same day, Birth Movie's Death expanded on the story, saying that the male Ghostbusters would be a spin-off, and that both the female and male Ghostbusters would team up in a third movie to deal with an Avengers-level event. Birth Movie's Death also reported that a prequel was in development. Midnight's Edge has learned even more details which so far have not been published elsewhere. Apparently, the idea is to take the plot of the original film and turn it into a trilogy of sorts. Zuul will be referenced towards the end of the first movie, which sets up the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper for the second movie. This in turn will lead up to the big baddie of the franchise for the third movie, Gozer the Gozerian. Defeating him is the Avengers-level event, which requires the different Ghostbusters teams to be established in the second movie to team up. Also, a children-oriented Slimer spin-off is in the works. These plans are subject to change, however, and everything rides on the first movie being a hit. To help ensure it is, the anonymous 4chan tipster claimed that Sony both bribed and strong-armed the original team to be in and endorse the movie. The movie's defenders claim that Sony strong-arming the original cast is a conspiracy theory without any root in reality. However, leaked emails from the Sony hack suggest there may be more to this. For all the years the now defunct Ghostbusters 3 was in development, Bill Murray had been a holdup. Sony did not seem too bothered by this as long as Ghostbusters wasn't a priority for them. But that tune changed when they actually wanted to put the movie into production. In an email exchange from late October and early November of 2013, Sony brass are talking about aggressive litigation in case Murray denies them again. This discussion is not about whether or not to go down the aggressive path. They are all happy with that, but about which lawyer can do the job quietly and outside of the spotlight. In another leaked email from the day news that Paul Feig would helm a female-centric Ghostbusters remake leaked, Dan Aykroyd was described as quote-unquote on the warpath, clearly indicating he wasn't happy at the time. It is of course possible that Murray and Aykroyd, both of whom have since praised the remake in the most glowing of terms, have had a change of heart and are entirely genuine in their endorsement. There are, however, some fans who feel comments like the movie being funnier and scarier than the originals and "I'm paying to see that and bringing all of my friends" come across as somewhat dictated. But let's get back to the movie itself and what its plot might be. Reddit user Stance1984 claimed to work in post-processing and to have seen an early cut of the movie. Since his employer, in his own words, treats its staff poorly and doesn't give a crap about them, he doesn't mind violating the NDA and breaking down the entire plot of the movie, which he did just a couple of days after the first trailer was released, while the information he posted had never been published or even rumored anywhere else before. It lined up with not just the footage in the first trailer, which was already out, but also with footage in trailers that wouldn't be released until weeks and even months later. In the months since that initial Reddit leak, however, the movie has gone through further changes in editing, but through other sources, we have learned what those changes are. Spoiler alert, the plot of the finished movie is about to be revealed. The movie begins with a tour of the deceased Madame Albridge's estate, where the supernatural events start occurring, much like the library of the original movie. After the tour guide encounters the ghost of Madame Albridge, he screams in horror, and we cut to the opening credits and join our Ghostbusters-to-be. Kristen Wiig is a college professor whose boyfriend is awkward. This is in line with the recurring theme that all men in the movie are inept, stupid, or assholes. But he soon dumps her, and he really isn't part of the story, so let's move on. Kristen Wiig is trying to get her tenure, but a book she co-wrote with Melissa McCarthy in her past, literally called Ghosts of Our Past, is coming back to haunt her. Despite a quarrel over writing credit, Wiig wants her credit removed as it hurts her chances at tenure. McCarthy and fellow scientist Kate McKinnon convince Wiig to join them at the Albridge mansion to investigate what is happening there. Cue the slime puking scene, which causes Kristen Wiig to scream in panic that ghosts are real. Melissa McCarthy sees fit to upload this to YouTube. The video goes viral, which leads Kristen Wiig not only losing any chances of tenure, she is also fired by the dean of the university, played by Charles Dance. This then leads to the three creating what is to become the Ghostbusters. We then meet Rowan North, played by Neil Casey. Rowan, the villain of the piece, works at the Hotel Mercado despite being a graduate of Stanford and MIT. He has been bullied and rejected all his life, and in order to get revenge on the world and torture the living, he has built a machine that breaks the quote-unquote durable but not impenetrable barrier between the world of the living and the dead, in effect a ghost channeling machine. He encounters subway station worker Leslie Jones and rants about the fourth cataclysm. She dismisses him as a nut, but follows him into the tunnels, where she sees him manifest ghosts. Spooked, she ends up joining what is to become the Ghostbusters for her street smarts. Also, her uncle, Ernie Hudson, can provide them with a car. When they look for a suitable office space, they find the fire station but can't afford the rent. Instead, they set up shop in a Chinese restaurant, which is great for Melissa McCarthy as she loves Chinese food in general and wontons in particular. They hire Chris Hemsworth as the dim-witted eye candy secretary with whom Kristen Wiig wants to have sex with. He is said to be the highlight of the movie. After pimping the car into the Ecto-1 and donning the suits, the team busts their first ghost as the Ghostbusters, a green dragon at a rock concert, and they become famous after that. They catch the attention of a high-profile skeptic, played by Bill Murray, who ends up killing himself trying to disprove them. Meanwhile, Rowan is summoning ever more ghosts. The Ghostbusters track him down to the Hotel Mercado, where Annie Potts works as the receptionist. They confront Rowan, and during this confrontation, he kills himself. In the aftermath, they are branded as hoaxes and, quote-unquote, sad women by Mayor Andy Garcia and his office. This is just the beginning of their problems, though, because Rowan now returns as a ghost and possesses Melissa McCarthy. After Leslie Jones slaps the ghost of Rowan out of McCarthy using the power of Patty, he moves on to possess Chris Hemsworth instead. Rowan-possessed Hemsworth then uses the ghost channeling machine to open a ghost portal and unleash loads of ghosts upon the city. Kristen Wiig tries to warn the mayor that he needs to evacuate, but he dismisses her and has security drag her away as she frantically screams, "Get out of the city." She then encounters taxi driver Dan Aykroyd, who ain't afraid of no ghosts. Meanwhile, the three remaining Ghostbusters are fighting off a possessed parade of balloons in Times Square, including the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, who falls on top of them. Luckily, Kristen Wiig and her pocket knife comes to the rescue. They fight off the ghosts in the area with their new gadgets, and soon Rowan asks them what form they choose. Leslie Jones chooses the ghost from the Ghostbusters logo, which Rowan then becomes a giant version of, leaving an unharmed Hemsworth behind. The Ghostbusters try to flush giant logo Rowan down the ghost portal, and after some shenanigans, they succeed, while getting out of it themselves courtesy of the hose of a fire truck being tied around their waists. But Rowan isn't the only one to disappear into the portal. Slimer, reimagined as a Bugs Bunny-like character, steals the Ecto-1 and goes for a joyride in it with a female brunette Slimer. The Slimers and Ecto-1 end up lost in the portal, which seems pointless, until you realize this is the setup for the possible spin-off Slimer solo movie. The city is saved. The Ghostbusters are still branded as hoaxes, but now they can afford the rent on the fire station and relocate there. McKinnon finally gets the longed-after approval of her mentor, Sigourney Weaver, and the Ghostbusters get a new car from Uncle Ernie Hudson. The movie ends with Leslie Jones listening to a magnetic tape and hearing the name Zool, implying the keymaster and gatekeeper for the second movie, if there is one. The world first saw footage from the new Ghostbusters on March 3, 2016. When the first trailer was released, the world did not like what it saw, and the trailer soon became the most disliked trailer on YouTube of all time. All subsequent trailers, both domestic and international, would go on to receive horrible like to dislike ratios as well. Many fans and pundits took to Twitter, Facebook, chat rooms, and YouTube to voice their frustrations and opinions of where they deemed the movie to have gone wrong based on the trailers. Despite the impression you might get from glancing at the headlines of the media outlets covering the film, very little of the fan discontent is actually about the gender of the cast. Click here or on the link in the description for Midnight's Edge Editor-in-Chief Andre's take on the actual reasons why fans might have come to oppose the movie. However, Sony has seemingly made the strategic choice to simply not address the constructive and legit criticism of the movie. Instead, they have dismissed any and all criticism as misogyny. The majority of media outlets wittingly or unwittingly helped them out in this endeavor, painting with a broad brush anyone less than wildly excited about this movie as sexist manchilds who hate women, conveniently ignoring the fact that a very large chunk of the movie's detractors are women themselves. In an article published on April 29th, Screen Crush wrote that there is a lot of hatred directed towards the new trailer, primarily because it stars 4 women, though the haters would have you believe misogyny is not the real driving force behind their invective, and seemingly not at all connected to its quality. The same article also addressed the first trailer being the most disliked trailer of all time, claiming that the thumbs down votes aren't organic, they're part of a coordinated attack on the film by people who are opposed to its very existence. There have even been reports across the web that angry fans are using bots to artificially drive up the dislikes on the trailer. No one else, however, had seen any reports of bots being involved anywhere. The article's author, Mike Sampson, was asked on Twitter to provide a source for this extraordinary claim. He did not reply. When prompted to provide a source a week later, he replied, quote, "Gonna have to keep waiting. I don't work there anymore," unquote, and did not respond to any further prompts. But there are those who seem to believe that all publicity is good publicity even if it's negative. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Sony chairman Tom Rothman said about the online detractors, quote, "It's the greatest thing that ever happened. Are you kidding me? We're in a national debate, thank you. Can you please get some more haters to say stupid things?" End quote. He did not mention any examples of stupid things the alleged haters actually said. So far, the only one associated with the movie who has addressed the movie's detractors without labeling them as misogynists is original Ghostbusters director Ivan Reitman. He told Mashable that, quote, "I think there's way too much talk about gender when it comes to this film. I think that many of the people who were complaining were actually lovers of the original movie, not haters of women." End quote. He also said that he wasn't a fan of the way the reboot's critics had been lumped together by the movie's defenders under the catch-all banner of internet trolls, and that in his opinion, the lovers of the original movie felt there was some kind of sacrilege in redoing it, which shouldn't be minimized. He concluded by saying that all he asked fans of the original is that they give the new movie a shot. On June 30th, Reitman was asked on Twitter, "What movie from the 80s would you remake?" His answer was simply, "I wouldn't." For further details about how Sony treats male and female detractors differently and how seeing the movie became a political act, check out our Sony Hits Back at the Fan Backlash video by clicking the link in the description. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. Join us for spin-free news and analysis of the happenings and corporate politics behind the scenes of your favorite genre movies, as well as explorations of your favorite characters and their backgrounds and context here at Midnight's Edge.